Picture this. A crisp autumn morning in the affluent neighborhood of Oak Ridge Estates. The golden sunlight catches on the polished gates of number 42, a Victorian mansion with immaculate gardens. A weathered pickup truck pulls into the circular driveway, out of place among the luxury vehicles. From it emerges Marcus Wilson, his military posture still evident despite the years, his face lined with experiences most residents here couldn't imagine. He pauses, key in hand, looking up at what is now, unbelievably, his home. "Excuse me, what exactly do you think you're doing?" The sharp voice cuts through the morning quiet. Vivian Harrington, head of the neighborhood association, marches across her perfectly manicured lawn next door, designer sunglasses perched on her head, phone already in hand. "I'm calling security. This is a private community." Marcus turns, slowly, the key still clutched in his hand. "Ma'am, I'm Marcus Wilson. This is my house now." Vivian's perfectly sculpted eyebrows rise nearly to her hairline. "That's impossible. The Crawfords would never sell to someone like me." Marcus finishes quietly. Vivian's eyes narrow, taking in his worn jeans, the military veteran, cap, the calloused hands. "There must be some mistake," she insists, her voice dripping with disdain. Little did she know, the mansion rightfully belonged to Marcus, and her comfortable world of neighborhood dominance was about to change forever. "Let me take you back to where it all began." Marcus Wilson had served his country with distinction for 15 years. 2 tours in Afghanistan, a Purple Heart, and a habit of putting everyone else before himself. After his discharge, a combination of PTSD, a struggling economy, and a lack of support systems had led to the unthinkable, homelessness. For 3 years, Marcus lived in shelters, under bridges, and finally, in a veterans transition program, where he slowly began to rebuild his life. What people noticed about Marcus wasn't his circumstances but his character. Even while homeless, he volunteered at the shelter, organizing donation systems, mentoring younger veterans. His work ethic never faltered, picking up odd jobs, never late, never complaining. He had a particular expertise in carpentry, a skill learned from his grandfather, and could transform discarded wood into pieces of functional art. At the Transition Center, Marcus had created a community garden in what was once a trash-filled lot. The vegetables he grew supplemented meals at the center, and the garden became a peaceful haven where other veterans could find purpose and healing. The scent of tomato vines and fresh herbs replaced the smell of despair, and the soft sounds of growth became a gentle counter to the noise that sometimes still rattled in their heads from combat. Marcus had initially seen the community around him with optimism. The local coffee shop that didn't mind if he sat for hours with 1 cup, the librarian who set aside books on woodworking, the city council member who actually listened to his ideas about veteran housing. Then he noticed her, Vivian Harrington, watching him from her luxury SUV as he worked in the community garden one. Her expression, a mixture of disgust and suspicion. What Marcus didn't know then was that Vivian was the niece of Alfred Crawford, an elderly gentleman who lived alone in the Victorian mansion at Oak Ridge Estates. Alfred had been watching Marcus too, but with very different eyes. "You can't seriously expect to just move in here," Vivian says, standing in the doorway of the mansion's grand entrance hall. It's the day after their first encounter, and Marcus is carrying a duffel bag containing everything he owns. "Mr. Crawford's lawyer was very clear, Miss Harrington. Mr. Crawford left the house to me in his will." "My uncle was clearly not in his right mind," Vivian snaps. "He met you what? Once? Twice? At that veterans charity event he insisted on attending?" Marcus sets down his bag gently on the polished wooden floor. "We met at the fundraiser, yes. And then he started visiting the transition center. He volunteered there twice a week for the last 8 months of his life." "Impossible. Uncle Alfred would have told me. Perhaps he knew how you'd react." Marcus keeps his voice level, professional. Despite sleeping on a shelter cot the night before, he stands with dignity. "I'm sorry for your loss, Ms. Harrington. Your uncle was a good man." Vivian's manicured finger jabs toward his chest. "This isn't over. That won't stand up in court. My family has been in this house for generations. We don't just give away our heritage to charity cases." She turns on her designer heel, calling over her shoulder. "And the neighborhood association has strict rules about property maintenance, business operations, and the kind of people who can live here. You won't last a month." Marcus watches her leave, then turns to the emptiness of the grand house, whispering, "Thank you, Mr. Crawford. I won't waste this chance." In the weeks that follow, Vivian's campaign against Marcus begins in earnest. First, it's the constant complaints about his truck, which she claims violates neighborhood aesthetic guidelines. Marcus politely moves it to the back of the property, out of sight from the main road. Then comes the noise complaints. When Marcus begins making minor repairs to the aging mansion, despite only working during permitted hours and being meticulous about cleaning up, Vivian calls city inspectors 3 times in 2 weeks. "You need permits for that work," the inspector says, looking uncomfortable as Vivian stands behind him, arms crossed triumphantly. "I have them right here," Marcus responds, producing properly filed paperwork. "I checked the local ordinances before I began." The inspector reviews them and nods. "Everything seems in order, Mr. Wilson." Vivian's face flushes with anger. What about the business regulations? He's clearly running a commercial operation out of a residential property. "I'm renovating my own home, Ms. Harrington," Marcus explains patiently, "not operating a business." As the inspector leaves, Officer Sarah Chen, who had been called to keep the peace during the inspection, lingers behind. "Don't let her get to you," Officer Chen says quietly. "My brother was in the service too. Afghanistan, 2010. 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines?" Marcus asks. "How did you know?" "Just a guess." "Tell him welcome home from me." Officer Chen smiles. "She's been a nightmare for everyone in this neighborhood, not just you. Document everything." The escalation continues when Vivian organizes a neighborhood association emergency meeting, conveniently scheduled when Marcus is volunteering at the Veterans Center. The resulting updated guidelines specifically target each of Marcus's activities. Stricter rules on home renovations, a new clause about appropriate vehicles, and even regulations about garden structures that would affect the small greenhouse he's planning. When Marcus begins inviting fellow veterans to the mansion for weekly support meetings, Vivian circulates a petition about commercial gathering restrictions in residential areas. She approaches Marcus's neighbors directly, spinning tales about declining property values and security concerns. Marcus discovers this when Bill Thornton, a retired doctor from across the street, comes to warn him. "She told us you're planning to turn this place into a homeless shelter," Bill explains. "Said it would bring crime and drugs into the neighborhood." Marcus shakes his head. "I'm hosting a support group for veterans. Many of them have jobs, homes. Some are struggling, yes, but they're men and women who served our country." "I figured it was something like that," Bill says. "My father was at Normandy. He never talked about it, but I know he struggled. What you're doing matters." Despite growing neighborhood support, Vivian's tactics escalate. She has her landscapers accidentally damage the heritage oak tree on the property line between their houses, the one providing shade for Marcus's veterans' gatherings. When confronted, she feigns ignorance while the ancient tree slowly dies from the chemicals her gardener applied. The final straw comes when Marcus returns from a veterans' hospital visit to find a chain-link fence erected 3 feet onto his property, cutting off access to the side garden where he's been growing vegetables to donate to the transition center. "Your property line was incorrectly marked," Vivian states when he confronts her. "I've simply reclaimed what was already mine." Marcus takes a deep breath, feeling the familiar tightness in his chest that precedes his panic attacks. The survey markers and property records clearly show. "Take it up with my lawyers," she interrupts, smirking. "I'm sure you can afford a lengthy legal battle, being so financially established." That night, sitting alone in the vast living room of the mansion, Marcus realizes normal methods won't work with Vivian. He needs to think like he did in the military, strategically, and with purpose. The next day, Marcus begins installing security cameras around his property. High quality, discrete devices that record continuously. He documents the incorrect fence placement with photographs, measurements, and copies of the official property surveys. When Vivian has her sprinklers malfunction and flood a section of his garden, it's captured in crisp 4K video. When she instructs her landscapers to blow lawn clippings onto his driveway, that too is recorded, along with her clear directions to the workers. Marcus creates a methodical log of every incident, including times, dates, and witnesses. He photographs the dying oak tree and has an arborist document the deliberate damage. Each complaint she files with the city or neighborhood association is countered with calm, factual responses. One afternoon, Vivian confronts Marcus as he's showing Officer Chen the security footage of Vivian's gardener damaging his property. "Spying on me now?" Vivian demands, her voice carrying across both their yards. "This is harassment. Just documenting what happens on my property," Marcus replies evenly. "You don't belong here," Vivian hisses, lowering her voice but not her intensity. "This neighborhood has standards. My uncle made a mistake, but I'm going to correct it. One way or another, you'll be gone by summer." As Vivian storms away, Officer Chen turns to Marcus. "That sounded like a threat." Marcus nods, watching Vivian's retreating figure. "It was. and now we have it on record. But Vivian's most outrageous violation is still to come. While Marcus is at a day-long Veterans Affairs appointment, she takes action. He returns to find a demolition crew tearing down the historical gazebo at the far end of his garden, a cherished feature specifically mentioned in Alfred Crawford's will as his favorite spot to read. "Stop!" Marcus shouts, rushing across the lawn. The workers pause, looking confused. "We have permits," the foreman says, producing paperwork that appears legitimate, except for one detail. "This is registered to Vivian Harrington, not me," Marcus points out. "And this signature, this isn't mine." The foreman pales, examining the document more closely. "Ma'am assured us the homeowner had approved this." Vivian appears from behind, the partially demolished structure. "It's an eyesore and a safety hazard. I'm doing you a favor. Besides, the neighborhood guidelines clearly state that all exterior structures must be approved by the association, which this never was." Marcus feels something shift inside him, not anger, but clarity. The gazebo predates the neighborhood association by 70 years. It's grandfathered in, as you well know. Vivian shrugs, unconcerned. "Prove it." As she walks away, Marcus notices something she doesn't. Her designer heel has broken off in the soft garden soil. He picks it up, turning it over in his hand thoughtfully. That evening, alone in Alfred Crawford's study, Marcus sits at the antique desk, surrounded by books and mementos of a life well lived. Among them is a leather-bound volume, Alfred's personal journal, which he left specifically for Marcus. Turning to a marked page, Marcus rereads a passage. "Vivian has never understood that wealth is a responsibility, not a privilege. She sees the house as a status symbol, not as the home it was meant to be. I fear what she would do with it after I'm gone." Marcus closes the journal, his decision made. His military training had taught him about strategic response, proportional, effective, and decisive. And his years on the streets had taught him about systems, how they worked, and how they failed people. Over the next 3 weeks, Marcus prepares meticulously. He researches property laws, historical preservation statutes, and the neighborhood association bylaws that Vivian wields so effectively. He discovers that Alfred Crawford wasn't just wealthy. He was influential, serving on city boards and historical commissions. The mansion isn't just a valuable property. It's a designated historical landmark with specific protections. Marcus consults quietly with a lawyer recommended by Officer Chen's brother, documenting everything with precision. He meets with city officials about the historical significance of the property, particularly the gazebo. He has the tree examined by 3 separate arborists, each confirming the deliberate damage. Most importantly, he learns about Vivian's precarious financial position, something Alfred had hinted at in his journal. Despite her displays of wealth, she's leveraged to the hilt, counting on her inheritance of the mansion to settle considerable debts. Marcus tests his understanding of the relevant regulations by submitting renovation plans for the damaged gazebo to the Historical Commission. Establishing precedent and relationships, he installs additional cameras with improved night vision and audio capabilities, particularly focusing on the property boundaries. With everything in place, Marcus waits. He doesn't have to wait long. On a Saturday morning, when Marcus has visibly left for his veterans support group, Vivian makes her move. Dressed in gardening clothes, a costume for her, as she's never actually gardened, she approaches the property line, carrying an expensive landscaping chemical sprayer. The security cameras capture her trespassing onto Marcus's property, deliberately, saturating the soil around newly planted memorial trees with what will later be identified as a powerful herbicide. She's so focused on her task that she doesn't notice Bill Thornton walking his dog nearby. She doesn't see the Historical Commission representative who happens to be taking photographs of the mansion for their records. And she certainly doesn't notice the small red lights of the cameras documenting her every move. As Vivian finishes and turns to leave, she comes face to face with Marcus. "Lovely day for gardening," he says calmly. Vivian startles, nearly dropping the sprayer. I was just treating some weeds along the fence line. On my side of the property? The wind must have carried the spray," she says, recovering quickly. "Perhaps if you maintained your garden better, I wouldn't have to take matters into my own hands." Marcus nods thoughtfully. "You might be right. In fact, I've been thinking a lot about property maintenance lately." He gestures toward his house. "Would you like to come in for a moment? There's something I'd like to show you." Curiosity overcomes caution, and Vivian follows him inside, perhaps sensing an opportunity to gather intel on his plans. In the study, Marcus offers her a seat, and then opens his laptop. "I've been documenting some maintenance issues," he explains, turning the screen toward her. On it plays a compilation of security footage. Vivian trespassing, vandalizing, directing workers to damage his property, and forging documents. The footage is clear, time-stamped, and damning. "This is invasion of privacy," she sputters. "You can't record me without my consent." "Actually, in this state, I can record anything happening on my property," Marcus replies. "But that's not all I wanted to show you." He clicks to another screen, a formal letter from the city's Historical Preservation Board. "It seems your actions have attracted some attention. The board was particularly concerned about the damage to the gazebo and the heritage oak tree, both specifically protected in the historical designation." Vivian's face pales slightly, but her composure holds. "Minor violations at most, a small fine." "Under normal circumstances, perhaps," Marcus agrees. "But intentional damage to historically protected property? That's a different matter." He clicks to another document. The district attorney feels it might constitute criminal vandalism, given the documented intent and the value of the damaged property. For the first time, Vivian looks uncertain. "You're bluffing." Marcus continues as if she hadn't spoken. "Then there's the matter of the forged permit application." He pulls out a file folder. Forgery is taken quite seriously, especially when it involves official city documents. Vivian stands abruptly. "This is ridiculous. You can't prove intent." "Actually," comes a voice from the doorway, "he can." Officer Chen steps into the room, accompanied by the Historical Commission representative and Bill Thornton. "Ms. Harrington," Officer Chen says formally, "we'd like to ask you some questions about the incidents Mr. Wilson has documented." Vivian's carefully constructed facade crumbles. "This is a setup. He's been provoking me for months, destroying the character of the neighborhood, bringing down property values with his charity cases and decrepit truck." "Interesting perspective," says the commission representative, a distinguished older woman who Vivian suddenly recognizes as the head of the city council. "We've actually seen property values increase since Mr. Wilson began his historically accurate renovations. The commission is quite impressed with his commitment to preservation." Marcus stands, his voice gentle but firm. "There's one more thing you should know, Vivian. I'm not pressing charges." The room falls silent. "What?" Vivian finally manages. "On one condition," Marcus continues. "The neighborhood association will amend its bylaws to remove the restrictions you've added targeting veterans' gatherings and support services, and you'll step down as head of the association." "You can't force me to resign," Vivian insists, though her voice lacks conviction. Bill Thornton clears his throat. "Actually, we took a vote yesterday. The association has already removed you, pending today's evidence review." "But this is my neighborhood. My family was represented by Alfred Crawford," Marcus interrupts gently, "a man who understood that privilege comes with responsibility. He left you the guest house on the other side of the property, Vivian, not out of obligation, but out of hope that you might learn what he valued: community, service, compassion." Vivian looks stricken. "The guest house? But that's hardly worth about $1.5 million, Marcus finishes. "More than most people will see in a lifetime. Alfred hoped you would use it to start fresh, without the burden of keeping up appearances beyond your means." Tears finally break through Vivian's perfect makeup. "You knew about my debts?" Marcus nods. "Alfred knew. He tried to help you many times. This was his final attempt." 3 weeks later, the story breaks on local news, then goes viral on social media. The headline reads, "Homeless Veteran Inherits Mansion, Transforms Community." The security footage, released with faces blurred for privacy, shows Vivian's most egregious actions, followed by Marcus's compassionate resolution. Comments flood in from around the country. "Finally, a rich entitled person gets what they deserve. This veteran is a hero twice over, once for his service and once for his restraint. I would have pressed charges so fast." The story catches fire when other residents of Oak Ridge Estates come forward with their own experiences of Vivian's tyranny. The family who couldn't build a wheelchair ramp for their child. The widower who was fined for planting wildflowers instead of a manicured lawn. The young couple harassed about their modest wedding decorations. Journalists discover Vivian's pattern of behavior extends beyond the neighborhood. Complaints from service workers, housekeepers who left after weeks, gardeners replaced for minor infractions. Her social media accounts are rapidly set to private, as comments flood in, but screenshots of her previous tone-deaf posts about maintaining neighborhood standards and keeping property values high continue to circulate. Vivian's attempt at damage control, a carefully worded statement about misunderstandings, and her deep respect for veterans, falls flat when compared to video evidence. Her country club membership is quietly not renewed. Invitations to charity, galas mysteriously stop arriving. Meanwhile, Marcus becomes an unintentional symbol of something larger: dignity in the face of entitlement, compassion over retribution. veterans organizations reach out for collaboration. The Historical Commission features the mansion's restoration in their annual tour. A prominent home renovation show requests to document the gazebo rebuilding. Most significantly, other residents of Oak Ridge Estates begin to transform. The retired doctor organizes a neighborhood health clinic in his home. A tech executive creates a coding boot camp for disadvantaged youth. The neighborhood association's revised bylaws now emphasize community service and inclusion, with a special section ensuring that veterans' support activities are always welcome. As for Vivian, she moves into the guest house with little fanfare. The first month she stays mostly inside, Venetian blinds closed against curious eyes. But change comes slowly, then all at once. It begins when Marcus hires a local landscaping company owned by a veteran to restore the damaged garden areas. When they arrive at the guest house to discuss the connecting pathways, Vivian unexpectedly invites them in for coffee. The owner later tells Marcus that she asked thoughtful questions about his service and seemed genuinely interested in his transition to civilian business ownership. Next, Marcus notices lights in the guest house late at night. Through the open curtains, he can see Vivian at a desk surrounded by papers. He learns from Bill Thornton that she's taking online courses in property management and accounting, practical skills to rebuild her life without the family wealth she'd always assumed would be hers. The most significant moment comes 6 months after the confrontation. Marcus is hosting a garden party for veterans and neighbors when Vivian approaches hesitantly, carrying a dish covered in foil. "I brought lemon bars," she says, her voice lacking its former imperious tone. "My grandmother's recipe." The conversation stills, all eyes turning to Marcus. "Perfect timing," he says, gesturing to an empty spot on the table. "We were just about to have dessert. It isn't immediate forgiveness. That will take more time and consistent change. But it's a beginning. By the end of summer, the mansion's renovation is complete. The gazebo stands restored at the garden's edge, more beautiful than before. The heritage oak tree couldn't be saved, but in its place grows a circle of new oaks, planted by veterans during their support meetings, each tagged with the name of someone lost, either in combat or to the struggles that followed. Most remarkably, Marcus has transformed the mansion's carriage house into a transition center for veterans working to re-enter civilian life. With proper permits and the neighborhood association's full support, the program offers temporary housing, job training, and community integration for 6 veterans at a time. The center's first success story is James Rodriguez, a former Army medic who moves from the transition center into a small apartment above Bill Thornton's garage, where he helps the retired doctor with his neighborhood clinic while studying to become a physician assistant. Marcus himself continues to live simply, occupying just 3 rooms of the vast mansion. The rest he opens for community events, historical tours, and veterans gatherings. His battered pickup truck remains, though now it's parked proudly in the circular driveway rather than hidden away. It becomes something of a neighborhood landmark. Children leave thank you notes under the wipers when school projects focus on veterans. Neighbors drop off home-cooked meals when they know Marcus is working late at the transition center. 1 year after Marcus first walked up the mansion's grand steps, a documentary crew arrives to film a follow-up story. They find a transformed community. Property values have indeed risen, but more importantly, so has the quality of life. The neighborhood association now measures success by community engagement metrics, rather than aesthetic uniformity. 3 other veterans have moved into the area, welcomed warmly. The crew interviews Marcus on the mansion's broad front porch, asking about his unexpected journey. "Alfred Crawford saw something in me that I'd forgotten was there," Marcus explains, looking out over the garden where veterans and neighbors are gathered for a weekend barbecue. "Not just what I could do with the house, but what the house could do for others. Homes aren't just about the people who own them. They're about the communities they create." The camera pans to catch Vivian across the garden, helping James Rodriguez serve food to elderly neighbors. She looks up, catching Marcus's eye, and offers a small, genuine smile. "The most valuable inheritance isn't property," Marcus concludes. "It's purpose." Alfred knew that. I think now, maybe Vivian is beginning to understand it too. In the background, children play tag around the circle of young oak trees, their laughter carrying on the summer breeze. The camera lingers on the memorial tags, now weathered but still legible, before rising to capture the whole scene. A community healing together, finding connection across differences that once seemed insurmountable. Have you ever witnessed someone get exactly the comeuppance they deserved? Or maybe you've been in Marcus's shoes, facing someone who abused their power or privilege. We'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. If this tale of patience, strategy, and well-deserved consequences resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of justice served with a side of compassion. Remember, sometimes the best revenge isn't about getting even, it's about getting better. Until next time, remember that kindness is free, but boundaries are priceless.